Welcome to Killer Women with your host, best-selling author Danielle Girard. And now, Danielle's next killer woman.
Welcome to Killer Women Podcast, a proud member of the Authors on the Air Global Network with more than 4 million listeners. I am your host, suspense author Danielle Girard, and my guest today is Rachel Howzell Hall. Rachel is the New York Times bestselling author of We Lie Here, These Toxic Things, and Now She's Gone, and They All Fall Down, as well as her newest, What Never Happened, and with James Patterson, The Good Sister, which was included in Patterson's collection, The Family Lawyer. A Los Angeles Times Book Prize finalist, as well as an Anthony International Thriller Writers and Lefty Award nominee. Oh, girl. Rachel is also the author of The Land of Shadows, Skies of Ash, Trail of Echoes, and The City of Saviors in the Detective Elouise Norton series. A past member of the board of directors for Mystery Writers of America, Rachel has been a featured writer on NPR's acclaimed Crime in the City series and the National Endowment for the Arts Weekly podcast. She's also served as a mentor in Pitch Wars and the Association of Writers and Writing Programs. Rachel lives in Los Angeles with her husband and daughter. Welcome, Rachel.
Thank you. You reading that? It's like, no wonder I'm tired.
You're right. Yeah, you are so successful. I'm so happy to get a chance to talk to you. And I'm a huge fan in addition.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm glad we saw each other in Denver, right?
Of all places, yeah. Denver, that very interesting Denver readers conference, which was super. Yeah. More about that right later. But please tell our listeners about What Never Happened.
What Never Happened is a story about an obituary writer who has lost her job, and she's also a victim of a home invasion that happened to her family 20 years before on Catalina Island. They had bought a house there, and someone was unhappy about that. And so her family perished, and Coco is the other survivor. And now she's going back to reclaim her house, her land, and to also take care of her last family member, her aunt. And old women across the island start dying, and she's trying to figure out if it's related to what happened with her family a long time ago, or if this is a whole new thing. So yeah, it's kind of like a locked room mystery, but it's a locked island because I said it at the start of COVID. When we were all isolated and everything shut down. And for an island like Catalina, which is 26 miles off the coast of Los Angeles, isolation is weird when you see the city right over there. So yeah, it's basically a book about do I belong here or not?
Right. So, yeah. And Catalina is a very sort of, wealthy little enclave of an island. I mean, as well as a tourist place. So, she's treated rather poorly. I have to say, and this is not a spoiler because this is the very, very beginning of the book. We begin with, I'm finding the page here, the obituary of Colette Sienna Weber.
Yes.
Who is Coco. And I thought that was I was like, what? Because you get attached to Coco, and I will not spoil this. There is a fabulous twist at the end of this book, and you have to read it to find out. But that was I thought that was so interesting. I've never started a book and been like, well, wait a minute, this is the protagonist that I'm following this whole book, and I just read her obituary.
Yes, no, that was my fabulous editor who's like, what if we put that in the front? I'm like, ooh, intriguing. Yeah, it was exciting actually writing these imaginary obituaries. And someone asked me about, why obituary writer? It's like, well, her family was killed, and we've all read obituaries that just read kind of flat and stuff about the facts and nothing about who these people were. And since writing was her superpower, she wanted to write something special and interesting about them. And so she's done that for most of the people she's written about. So
Yeah,
yeah,
she does an amazing job of finding family and asking questions.
yeah,
And she has that personality too. She's not afraid to sort of speak up and show up and be like, "Well, tell me more." And that
right,
is sort of what happens where she ends up on the trail of something bizarre. These women are dying in places where they shouldn't have been, where
right,
they probably couldn't have gotten easily.
yeah.
And I want to talk about Gwen, because another
Okay.
thing I love, and we were
Yeah.
talking about this a little bit before we started recording, which is that we are, of the age now where our the generation above us is aging, and and Gwen is, Gwen is not an easy lady,
No,
right?
no, she is
Uh,
not.
she's not an easy lady, and here's Coco, like she's also the person who took care of Coco when her whole family was killed.
Yeah.
And so there's that, of course, it's like a parent, right? She's taking care of her
Yeah.
like a parent.
And it's
Um,
a conflict because when, like you said, she was always kind of difficult and a little resentful, but she was there. Coco has felt that resentment, but how do you deal with a caretaker or a parent or a guardian who, pushes you away and can't be like what your mother was or your father was. So
right,
yeah, she's having a hard time of just even knowing what to say to her aunt because
right.
anything could just set Gwen off. And
And
the people
yeah.
in our real lives are like that, where you're just
Oh,
creeping around them and making sure you don't say the wrong thing. So
and
I
there's that
wanted that.
reversal. There's that reversal that happens as our parents age, where instead of them taking care of us, which is sort of how we expect things to work, we're now taking care of them. And
Yeah.
Gwen has got, some neurological sort of dementia type. She doesn't necessarily take her medication when she should. And so, Coco steps in. And of course, Gwen's been an independent woman living in this house, which
Right.
has been her house but isn't actually her house, right? For all
Correct.
these years. and
Uh-huh.
and she does very much resent Coco, who's not only sort of moved into her space but also is now sort of telling her what to do.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
again, that's a really that's a realistic thing. It's heartbreaking for those of us in real life where it's happening, but I wanted a real interaction, something that people can say, yeah, this is uncomfortable, but it's kind of true. And that is
So
Gwen. I
true.
mean,
Yeah.
she can't, she is bucking against um, losing her capacity, her mental capacity, her freedom to drive around the island, all this by this kid who thinks she knows better and wants to take her from her space. So yeah,
Right.
it's a difficult situation. Two women together in an old rickety house. What could go wrong?
And on top of that, and Coco's bringing along some baggage, shall we
Yes, she
say.
is.
She's got some baggage. She's leaving a marriage, and under, not at the best of terms, and
Yeah.
she's got some stuff that's just chasing her. So tell us, can you remember that? I always like to know, like, how
Mhm.
authors get their ideas. Where do you remember where this came from?
I wanted to tell a Catalina story because as a Los Angeles kid, that was one of the field trips that you go on when you're an LA kid, either
Right.
for the day or outdoor education. And it was fascinating because even then, writers, we're always constantly thinking stuff, right? So I go over there and it's so perfect. And it's not. And so that was always fascinating. And it was also fascinating that I didn't see, many Black people there.
Right.
So it's like, well, what's that about? Why are there more bison here than Black people? So that, and I also wanted to talk about relationships and painful relationships that make you become who you are. These formative relationships that shape who you are and affects future relationships. So what happened with Coco and her family, made her someone who just wanted a connection. And that connection wasn't necessarily the best, but it was someone, it was a promise of a family. And it didn't work. And so
Mm-hmm.
now she's gone back to someone else who doesn't really accept who she is as an individual. So
It
yeah,
doesn't appreciate her, right?
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And so did Coco, did Coco appear first? Did Gwen appear first? Do you sort of, are you somebody who's like, well, this is a person who will be sort of created because of this incredible trauma? Like,
Yeah.
do you remember sort of, how does that work in your brain?
Coco definitely came first because, like we said at the very beginning, we're that generation, the sandwich generation, where the people who we looked at as strong and invincible are
Yeah.
aging and forgetting, and they're dying, to be frank. And
Right.
so I wanted to explore what that felt as a 30, 40, 50-year-old, because it's happening to me. And I tend to write about things that I've either experienced personally or saw, happening to someone else close. And I wanted to figure out, well, if you're the sole survivor of one of the most awful thing that could happen to you, how does that affect your future relationships and your trust issues? And now let's put her on an island where she's already isolated psychologically. Let's isolate her more with being on an island, and isolate her some more with being, in the start of a pandemic. So I just wanted to layer and layer and layer, because a lot of people like Coco were going through, COVID-19 in
Yeah.
places that were far off and they couldn't be reached. So I found it fascinating. And yeah,
Yeah. And in addition to that, she's still, I mean, the town is still really white, right? I mean,
yeah,
she is still a sort of
yeah,
rare Black person
yeah,
in this. So another isolation, right? She's really, really isolated,
that
and
too.
there's
You're correct.
some
Yeah,
danger,
yeah.
and that makes her more isolated because she hasn't really told,
Hmm.
Gwen or anybody sort of about the threat that is,
She
you know.
can't relax,
Mhm.
and so her shoulders are up like this because everyone, I mean, even the house makes noise, right?
Yeah.
It's
Right.
rickety and drafty, and there's, nightshade growing over there. It needs to be cut back, but it belongs there.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's hard to uh, become whole when there's a place that doesn't want you to be.
And do you feel like by writing about these, I mean, when you said things that happened to you, you mean, yeah, I'm assuming we're not talking about the home invasion and the dead family, because,
No, 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 no,
but
no, no.
I know what you mean.
Although we have had someone come into our house while we were here. It was an early, Thursday morning, and yeah, they left without coming to the bedrooms, but they were definitely in our den and took all the electronics, and just how scary that was and how
Oh
it could have
my
all gone
God.
wrong. So yeah, that was a part of it too, of being so close to danger and not realizing that, yeah, your life could have been
Right.
like Coco's family. It could have just been over. So
That is what an incredible intrusion, right? It's
yeah,
so invasive.
yeah, yeah. And
Oh
it
God.
took it took all of us a moment to come down off of that, and to not be scared of every, when the dog barks, what is that barking? Is there
Right.
someone out there? Yeah, you can't relax in your own home. So I
Wow.
know about that firsthand.
Yes, you do.
Um,
Wow.
yeah,
I'm so
so
sorry.
yeah,
That is.
but we write to
Mhm.
exercise that, to figure out your feelings about that. So I took that and threw
Yeah.
it on yoga.
Isn't
Yeah.
that, I do think that that is a way of processing trauma, right? Little
Yes.
t trauma, big T trauma. That's how we process it as writers, I think, as we write about it. And sometimes that is, it does, it helps. I think it helps.
Yeah.
It's People are like, why would you want to write about that? And I think it's just the way the writer brain works. And that's why we write thrillers, right? Because
Yeah.
the scariest stuff
Right.
is the stuff that
Yeah.
requires the
And we know
most,
that other people are, experiencing this, and they don't necessarily know how to express it. I mean,
right?
that's our job, to take something that's awful and put it in a way that people get it, and
Yeah.
get some answers and some approaches to healing.
Yeah. And I think that that is, it's so powerful. And I do think we have people, I'm sure you have people who reach out and say, this really helped me with,
Yes.
something. And that is not the most sort of powerful thing when you hear from a reader, your
Yeah.
book touched
Yeah.
me,
Your
your
book
book.
touched me. I know this lady. I have a
Yeah.
Gwen, I know a Coco. I am a Coco,
Right.
it does feel good that, one, people are seeing themselves in this and, get something from how I see things. And, maybe it can help them too. So yeah,
Exactly.
it's
And
a
also it's
good
just
thing.
the dimension of of humanness, right? That we're all sort of, we're a little bit cobbled together, a little bit broken,
Cobbled together is perfect. Yeah.
right? Insecure in ways that, people don't see from the outside, but when you get inside our heads and you get inside the heads of our characters, you get
Ooh,
to see
yeah.
that's us, right? That's
That's
all of
us.
us.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
totally us. So I tell us, I know we're going to be, I want to make sure I'm going to be really aware of the time, but I wanted to ask you, do you sort of plot out a whole story, Rachel? Are
Oh
you
gosh,
a
yes. I am a control freak. So yes,
oh,
I plot everything out, but I leave enough space for me to go off-roading if I need. And I feel comfortable doing that because I have everything written down. So
that's
yes,
amazing.
I still work a day job. So I
Yeah.
need, a list that I can check just so I can see that I'm making some advancement.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And how long does that take, that sort of process of, of plotting? Has it gotten easier over the books?
No, because the fear is, have I done this trick before? And if so, okay, how can I switch it up? And also, well, you're a writer, it's like, am I actually being smart? You don't know. And
Right.
so you hold back some and you do it again and then you stop. So it takes me about a month to be okay with the plot. I don't do character studies in the very
Okay.
beginning because I don't know these people. And so I
Uh-huh.
don't know who they are until I write that situation. And then second draft, I go back and figure out, oh, are they a dolphin or are they, a dog or a whale, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Right, right. Well, that's
Mhm.
interesting. You have the plot, and then how the characters respond to things will be
Yeah.
really different depending as you get to know them. So you're a plotter in terms of the action, but not in
Mhm.
terms of necessarily the characters.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's
Yeah.
that's
I
makes
I don't
sense.
know. I don't even know what I think and who I am until I get to that place. So
Right.
how could we? How could we possibly know, right?
That
And so
I agree. I totally agree. And
yeah.
there's some famous quote that's like, "Well, how do I know what I think until I write it down, or until I write it out, or something like," which makes sense to me too.
Yeah.
It's like I
Yeah.
I don't know. I got to work through that in the writing. So
Yeah, so I don't waste time, doing all that outline stuff for people because I'm going to change it anyway, and it's just going to kind of hold me back
yeah,
because I have to write her like this. It's like no, I'm going to let her come on page, and I'll figure out who she is, and then I hone and carve and shape in the subsequent drafts.
right. Because it is true that you don't, even if you did a character study, you don't really know the character until you're like, it's like spending time with a new friend. You don't really
Yeah,
know her until you've like
yeah,
had enough time with her.
right. It's a date,
It's a
but
date.
first date is different from the 10.
Right.
And people open up and get warm and start admitting things they never admit. And so, yeah,
Mhm.
that's how I see it.
Yeah, I think that to me that makes so much sense. And I love when you find that somewhere in that draft, when you figure out who your people are and you're like, "Oh my God,
Yeah,
you're a real person, you are my friend, and now you're in my head all the time."
all the time. And when they're gone, when you're finished, it's like, bye.
I
I love
know.
you.
And
Come back
you
again.
haven't done a series, right, Rachel? Have you done
Well,
a
I did
series?
the Lou Norton series.
Oh, that's right. Of course.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
So
And,
then you
I
get to
hated
see them
saying
again.
goodbye to Lou. But,
Yeah.
the thing about standalones, you get to meet different heroines, in different
Mhm.
situations. And while I love Lou, there's some stories that I wouldn't have been able to tell as I wanted with someone as smart and brave and brilliant as Lou Norton. The rest of us
Right.
total messes, and and in some ways that's more fascinating than anything. Us total messes.
Right, it's true.
Yeah,
No, you're right. That's like Lou's got her shit together, so
yeah, yeah.
that is not the choice for that. Well,
Right.
I also congratulations because I know this is already available. It's in Amazon. what do they call it now? Amazon
First
First?
reads,
First
yes.
reads.
Amazon First and First reads, yeah.
Amazon First. And I
Mhm.
noticed, I looked today, it's already got almost 4,500 ratings
Yes.
and a 4-star review. So people love this book, which I do. And I have to do this. This is the thing I love about Thomas and Mercer hardcovers is
Uh-huh.
I love that underneath that jacket is that
Gorgeous, right?
beautiful. God, they did such a beautiful job with this nightshade. I
Yeah.
absolutely love it.
Yeah.
So it
Every
is,
book that they've done, there's something lovely beneath it. And it's so gorgeous. I love this book. And that's Catalina Nightshade on the cover that's
yeah.
surrounding the words. Yeah.
Well, I
Yeah.
figured it was Nightshade. I'm not familiar with Catalina Nightshade, but
Mhm.
when I read about the Nightshade, I was like, that's what this must be. For me, I was just
Uh-huh.
like, oh, pretty purple flowers. And I love that it's pretty
Pretty
purple
purple
flowers.
poisonous flowers.
Deadly, exactly. Deadly pretty purple flowers. So,
Yes.
well, can you tell us what I mean, this is the worst question to ask authors as they put out their new
Mhm.
book, which, I'm always like, can we just enjoy the success of this book for a minute before we ask what is
What's
next? But,
next?
I have to ask,
Well,
Rachel, what are you working on?
yes. My next book is actually going to be my first fantasy. I'm
Okay,
writing a zoology, yes,
I
with
heard about this, so tell
Red
us.
Tower Books, which is a part of Entangled. Yes, so it's something else to be like freaked out and scared about, writing a whole new genre. But it's basically I would say The Witcher meets N.K. Jemisin, which means the action of The Witcher with the kind of intellectual whatever of N.K. Jemisin's work. So that comes out in February.
Oh my gosh, you were
Yeah.
already done. That is so
Yeah.
exciting.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I am excited. It's a completely different type of fandom as
Yeah.
you saw in Denver. And
Yeah.
I find myself when I was writing it, I have to write it with cosplay in mind.
Mm-hmm.
For those of you who don't know what cosplay, costume, people dress up. And that's a different aspect. It's like, well, she wears a cranberry leather vest and a cranberry cape. Could people find a cranberry leather vest? So let's change it to black. So yeah, it's a
Yeah.
different kind of thinking about fans as I created the story. So
That's so
I'm
fun. So
excited.
now are you going to write another thriller or is this like a
Yes,
shift? Okay.
that's next year. I am in developmental edits for that right now.
Okay, so you really have some stuff going on. Do you know, I know that the titles change and it's not, we could never, but do you have a tentative title for that one?
The tentative title is called Let Me Go, and it's an LA story, a Topanga Canyon story with fire and
Wow.
memory and relationships. I'll say that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, you do such a beautiful job of relationships. So every book has to be a relationship book. Well, I'm excited for the fantasy. It's fun. I'm not like a huge fantasy reader, but every once in a while I pick up one and I'm like, why don't I read more of these? They're so fun. It's
Yeah.
just fun to be in a totally different world.
It was hard in some ways because, crime is very real. We have
Yeah.
laws, we know it because we've experienced it. For fantasy, I'm like totally God and I'm making up all this stuff. And I turned to my husband, was like, well, what should I do next? And he's like, make it up. That you get to create this world. So
Right.
that took me a moment to trust that.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's going to be I imagine the beginning of a series, right? I mean, fantasy,
Yes.
people
They're
want a
going to
series.
be, 2 books with this character's point of view and then 2 books from another character's point of view. So, yeah.
Well, geez, you're going to have to quit your day job is all I can say.
Oh, well, hopefully maybe the fantasy will help me do that.
Yeah, I
Although
know.
I
I
have a
hear
kid
you.
in college, so,
Those
that's
kids in college are
that,
killing
yeah.
us. I know. I'm there too. Well, this is so exciting. I'm super okay. Tell me the title of the fantasy. Did you tell me and I missed it?
Oh, the fantasy? No, it's called, The Last One. I'm like, what the hell? The Last One.
The last one. And that's out in
Yeah,
February.
February.
And then probably sometime around this time next year, you'll have another book from Thomas and Mercer.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
are so busy. I'm always so impressed. I can't believe it. Well, listen, this was super fun. If you haven't read Rachel Howzell, no, I'm gonna do it wrong. Howzell
Yes.
Hall. See, in my brain, I'm like, no, you got it. No, you don't. No, you got it. If you haven't read Rachel's books yet, she's got a lot of amazing books, and most of them the ones I've read are all set in the Los Angeles area, which is
Yes.
really fun, and Topanga Canyon, another sort of famous place, and fires, which unfortunately we're all
Fire.
having more of. So
Yeah.
that one's coming up. But this was a really fun read, and I rooted for Coco and for Gwen. It's so funny to be like, I felt her pain too. Like, it's hard to
Yeah.
lose control. That is
Yeah.
no fun.
It's totally valid. It's totally
So
valid. So yeah. So I'm delving into all that.
I love it. Well, keep doing
Thank
what
you
you're
so
doing
much.
because it's working, and I hope to see you in real life again really soon. And
Yes,
congratulations on all your success.
thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you for inviting me on.
Thank you so much for joining us. You'll have to come back. I want to hear about this
Yes,
fantasy now.
definitely. Yes, I want to share that.
Okay. Thanks for
Okay.
joining us. This was Killer Women with Rachel Howzell Hall, and I'm Danielle, and we will see you next time. Bye.